Hello and welcome to 10 game dev things you should probably know. My name is Anna Hollenrake and I am a senior artist and illustrator working in the games industry. I recently gave this talk at a university for prospective students and I thought I could put it on YouTube for you all. Number 1, study wisely. Because if you're anything like me and you just got really into doing photo studies because all of those artists that you were watching just would do 14 hours a day of them, you might end up burning yourself out on painting the billionth rock photo. And that's not really the most useful way to study. Funnily enough, studying requires analysis. And sometimes copying something one-to-one isn't a particularly useful way to learn anything. I didn't get that much out of photo studies. I found them to be largely a bit pointless. But that's because I wasn't thinking about them. And also, I didn't know my learning style, which sounds kind of pretentious. Like, you know when people say work smart, not hard, it's usually a cop-out of them like trying to not actually give you any useful advice while still trying to sound reasonably clever and influential. But a good way to actually work smart is by learning how you learn. I work in much more of a kinesthetic way. I like to fail. I have to fail a lot at something. I cannot watch a 7-hour YouTube tutorial on ZBrush. I just can't. It's not my thing, and that's okay. I have to go into a piece of software and just suck at it. Just keep getting things wrong, clicking on stuff, hoping that something works. And eventually I get there. I just have to figure out how to fix things. And for me, when I'm studying, I have to have context. So for me, I will have a piece of art and then I will be like, oh, I don't know how this bit of machinery works. Okay, let's go out and sort that. Because if I don't have context, I'm largely just copying, just putting information into the void. It's boring. Number 2, you are the sum of the 5 people closest to you, and this doesn't always just mean productivity. I like to think that I kind of have really good people around me that raise me up. When I was at university, I really sought out people that were similar to me, that were motivated, that were driven. Because let's be honest, it's nice eating pizza and playing video games all day, but if you're an ambitious person that wants to achieve things, it is not helpful to have people around you that are lazy or just kind of drag you down. They can be negative. That's why it's not only just productivity. If you're around toxic people, it's not going to be good for you in terms of your learning. You want to be around people who lift you up, and you want to be around people who work hard, who you can trust to receive criticism from, who will tell you if your work sucks, because you need those kind of people, but not be dicks about it. Number 3, don't believe the overwork hype. Now, I've done a lot of speaking on this before, but basically don't burn yourself out. The industry definitely, especially in universities, glamorizes overwork, and that's not useful for anyone at all. You just end up being burnt out and exhausted with injured wrists, and working 14 hours a day isn't going to make you a better artist. It's going to make you tired and cranky, and that's what leads to depression and anxiety and RSI. It is so much easier if you eat well and you look after yourself, because if we're being totally real here, it's a lot of work just to get into the industry for 3 years before you burn out from exhaustion. You kind of want to be doing this for a little bit longer. Take your time with it. It's much better, believe me. Number 4, hobbies are good, be an interesting person. Now, this definitely ties into the whole burnout thing. It's good to have other things going on in your life, because if you don't, it can get real stressful real quickly if you don't have any other outlet other than games. But alongside that, there's this thing called the visual library, which is basically all the things that you have in your brain that you can draw upon for creative ideas. And there is definitely a habit, myself included, of drawing on things that are already in games, from concept art, to use that as inspiration, rather than going out into nature. Fashion is such an untapped resource. Like, the fashion industry is brimming with all these incredible ideas and concepts, but because it's not really like the done thing, we just end up with a lot of homogenous art, and it's not fun for anyone. It's not good for creativity, it's not good for business. Diversity, who'd have thought it? Really useful. Number 5, networking is kind of rubbish, friendship is better, with an added caveat of you only have business cards when you don't need business cards, because I did this all the time. I now present to you my truly weird, intense business cards that I got for my first ever concept art workshop. It probably won't surprise you to know that I didn't get any work from these because, oh my god, just stop it, Hannah, it's weird. But you can tell when people are trying to network, but it's not any kind of building useful relationships. Making friends with people is way more fulfilling. I made friends with like people on Twitter, and then I met them in real life, and it's lovely, and I feel like I actually have connections with those people, like personal connections, not just like, oh well, if I email that person, they might do this thing for me. It's not a really fulfilling way to live. Number 6, game jams are great fun and also force you to work in a team. Now, if you found your university group projects traumatic, upsetting, and deeply exhausting, you will be very correct in assuming that, because I don't think anyone has ever had a positive experience of a university group project. Usually because no one knows what they're doing, and some people just want to have naps. I'm not shading anyone here. I'm not shading anyone. But game jams are absolutely wonderful because everyone has taken time out of their usually weekend to engage with other people. I did a global game jam in January and it was the most fulfilling thing in the world. And I got to work with some really awesome people who I'm still in contact with now to create a sheep rolling game where you had to save the sheep before they got dragged out to sea. And it was honestly one of the most creatively fulfilling things I've ever done, whilst we were still making sure that we were staying healthy. We did little group stretches together. It was lovely. We went for a team jog. But game jams are also a wonderful way for you to get that experience of working with people that aren't necessarily in your field, as well as having a nice little parcel of work at the end of it. You've worked really hard and you've had a really wonderful creative experience where you just make something from scratch and then you can show it. And having a portfolio with actual playable game stuff in it rather than just random bits of art that don't actually do anything or relate to anything, that's way more useful. People want to see that kind of stuff. Number 7 is empathy. Soft skills are king. Being able to work with people and communicate effectively seems like it would be obvious, but when you are doing the whole overwork, burn yourself out, run yourself into the ground thing, which is pretty common, you end up not being able to like talk to people that well. I was really bad at it. I was very awkward. But when you start to put yourself in other people's shoes, when you start to work on your communication, being able to give and receive feedback is very important. You can't be precious about your work. That makes you just so much easier to get along with. Number 8, be visible and make things. Join a community. I'm on Twitter pretty much all the time. I love it so much, I have a problem. I put out on Twitter actually asking for advice and everyone was just like, be in a community, make games, make stuff, put it out there, make it tangible. Coming back to the game jam thing, there are so many tools out there like Twine and Game Maker that allow you, even if you aren't able to program, if you are pretty new to designing, that will still let you create cool stuff even if you aren't that experienced in it. And being able to make a tangible little product or a project is it's cool, it's shareable, it's interesting, and it allows you to experiment and fail often. Failing is important, but it's also great for your portfolio. So even if you don't take part in game jams, just make stuff, put it out there, see what happens. Number 9 is ask what all the buzzwords mean. There are so many, and I still don't know all of them by a long way. Things like baking and submission and play blast and VSD. I had to run upstairs 2 days ago and ask my housemate what VSD, it's vertical slice demo, stands for. I'm a professional. There are just so many little words, and it's just better to ask. I've had someone draw me a diagram on what the submission process actually is for games before, because in university you realise you don't get taught most of that. You get taught how to use 3ds Max, and then you have no idea what anything else is. Jira! Who knew? And number 10, which I think is probably the most important thing, is listen to what brings you joy. And that doesn't mean don't just ignore everything else, because getting outside of your comfort zone is fundamental. It's so important. But I also didn't know what I wanted to do for a really long time. I thought, oh, I want to do realistic photo bashing concepts. And that didn't work out. And then I was like, oh, I want to do Magic the Gathering illustrations. And that just didn't resonate with me in the long term. People could tell I wasn't really enjoying it. And I did so many different things before I could figure out what I wanted. And I had to fail over and over again. I had to experiment before it kind of settled with me. And I feel like I'm getting there now. I feel like I know what makes my heart sing, or just makes me really happy. Because that is the voice that you have that's unique to you. That's the voice that you can bring to the table that no one else can. That's the voice that you can create your own IP with, or you can create your own little project or comic. FYI, if you just spend your life making realistic mechs when you hate making realistic mechs, that's all you're going to get hired on, because your portfolio is full of realistic mechs and you don't want that. Don't do it. So that's my very brief rundown of 10 game dev things you should probably know. I hope some of it was useful. I realise it's not so much game dev as just the general summation of don't be a dick, which is the phrase that gets bandied about a lot in these kind of questions. Some of these things might seem obvious, but then when you self-reflect, Anna, and realise that you keep on working too hard, that you're like, oh, maybe this is something that I should address. If you found this useful, put your thoughts in the comments, whatever, I don't know. Like, subscribe, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not built for being a true YouTuber. It's just not for me. Have a lovely rest of your day, guys. I'm gonna go and scrub myself.